A person spent 40 years contributing to their retirement account every month. Without fail, they retired last year. Their account produces less per month than their rent. The system worked exactly as designed. It was just never designed entirely for them. Think about what you were told about retirement. Work hard, save consistently, contribute to your account every month, trust the process. And at the end, after 40 years of doing everything right, you will be comfortable. That promise was made in good faith by people who genuinely believed it. But here is what the promise never included: the fees being taken from your account every year, whether it performs or not. The shift of retirement risk from employers and governments onto individual workers that happened quietly across the 1980s and 1990s. The structural math that makes the retirement system extremely profitable for financial institutions and genuinely uncertain for the people it is supposed to serve. Most people will not discover any of this until they are close enough to retirement. That changing course is difficult. That is not accidental timing. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how the retirement system was redesigned, who benefits from that redesign, and what you can do right now regardless of where you are in your working life. Let us start with what changed and why. To understand what happened to retirement, you need to go back to how it used to work. For most of the 20th century, in developed economies, retirement security for workers came primarily through defined benefit pensions. A defined benefit pension is exactly what it sounds like. Your employer promises you a specific monthly income in retirement based on your years of service and final salary. The risk is the employer's. If the pension fund performs poorly, the employer makes up the difference. If you live longer than expected, the employer keeps paying. The worker knows exactly what they will receive. Then something changed, beginning in the late 1970s and accelerating through the 1980s and 1990s. Employers began switching from defined benefit pensions to defined contribution plans. The most common version in the United States is the 401k. The difference is fundamental. In a defined contribution plan, the employer contributes a set amount. The worker contributes a set amount. That money is invested in financial markets, and whatever it grows to is what the worker retires on. The promise changed from "you will receive this amount" to "you will receive whatever the market gives you." The risk transferred entirely from the employer to the worker. Now here is what made this transfer so significant. The defined benefit pension required employers to carry long-term financial obligations. That is expensive. The defined contribution plan eliminated that obligation. Employers contribute. Done. What happens to the money after that is the worker's problem. And the financial institutions managing those contributions collect fees on every dollar, every year, regardless of performance. The risk moved to the worker. The fees stayed with the institutions. That redesign was not an accident. It was a policy choice with very clear beneficiaries. And the worker was not at the top of that list. Now let us look at who actually benefits from the current structure. Because the retirement industry is one of the largest and most consistently profitable financial sectors in the developed world, and the profitability does not come from the workers retiring well. It comes from the assets under management. Here's how it works. When you contribute to a retirement account every month, that money is pooled with millions of other workers' contributions and managed by financial institutions. Those institutions charge fees, sometimes transparently labeled, often buried in fund expense ratios and administrative costs that most account holders never read. The average expense ratio on actively managed funds in retirement accounts historically runs between 1 and 1.5% annually. 1% sounds small. Over a 40-year career, 1% annually in fees on a growing retirement account can cost a worker somewhere between 20 and 30% of their final balance. Not the return, the balance, the money they actually retire on. A worker who would have retired with $500,000 retires with $350,000 instead. The difference went to fees paid every year, whether the fund outperformed or underperformed, whether markets rose or fell. The institution collected The worker absorbed the cost. Now here is the second beneficiary. Governments. Retirement accounts receive tax advantages, contributions, are made pre-tax in most structures, reducing taxable income today. But the tax is not eliminated. It is deferred. When the worker withdraws in retirement, they pay income tax on every dollar they take out. The government agreed to wait for its payment, not to forgive it. And because withdrawals happen over many years in retirement, the tax collection is steady, predictable, and reliable. The government built a long-term revenue stream out of your retirement savings. And then there is the third beneficiary, employers. The shift from defined benefit to defined contribution eliminated long-term pension obligations from corporate balance sheets. This made companies more attractive to investors. Higher stock prices, better earnings reports. Shareholders benefited. Workers got more risk and less certainty. The retirement system as currently structured is profitable for institutions, useful for governments, and convenient for employers. Its relationship with the worker it was sold to is more complicated. If what we just covered changed how you see your monthly retirement contribution, stay with me, because the structural design and the beneficiaries are only part of this. The fees you are paying right now, the ones buried in expense ratios most people never read, that is what comes next, and the number is larger than you think. Here is the part of retirement accounts that most people never look at. The expense ratio. Every mutual fund and index fund inside your retirement account charges an annual fee expressed as a percentage of the assets it manages. This fee is not invoiced. It is not a line item on your statement. It is deducted automatically from the fund's returns. Before you ever see a number, you never write a check. You never approve a payment. The money just quietly leaves. Now here's why this matters so much. The difference between a fund charging 1% annually and a fund charging 0.05% annually sounds trivial. 0.95% difference, less than 1%, but compounded over 40 years on a growing balance. That difference represents an enormous amount of money. On a retirement account, that reaches $500,000. The difference in fees between a 1% expense ratio fund and a low-cost index fund can exceed $100,000 over a career. $100,000, not taken in one dramatic moment, removed quietly, automatically, annually, for 40 years. And here's what makes this field deliberately obscured. Most employer retirement plans offer a menu of fund options. The funds on that menu are not selected based on lowest fees. They are selected based on relationships between the plan administrator and the fund providers. Higher fee funds generate more revenue for the administrators. Lower fee funds generate less. The incentive structure of plan design points toward higher fees, not toward the best outcome for the worker. And because the worker never sees a fee invoice, because the cost is expressed as a percentage rather than a dollar amount, most people spend their entire career paying fees they were never clearly shown. That is not an accident of design. That is a feature of it. Here is what changes when you understand the retirement system clearly. The first move is the simplest. Find out your current fund expense ratios. Log into your retirement account. Look at every fund you are invested in. Find the expense ratio for each one. If any of them are above 0.5%, you are almost certainly paying more than necessary. Most employer retirement plans include at least one low-cost index fund option, often buried at the bottom of the fund menu. Switch to it. That single action, switching from a high-fee fund to a low-cost index fund within the same retirement account, can recover tens of thousands of dollars over a career without changing your contribution amount by a single dollar. The second move is maximizing any employer match. If your employer matches contributions up to a certain percentage, that match is an immediate 100% return on that portion of your contribution. No investment consistently beats that. Contribute at least enough to capture the full match. Every dollar of match you leave on the table is a dollar of compensation your employer offered and you declined. The third move is understanding the tax structure of your accounts. Traditional retirement accounts defer tax until withdrawal. Roth-style accounts pay tax now and grow tax-free. Which is better depends on whether your tax rate will be higher now or in retirement. Most people have never been told to think about this question. It is worth thinking about. The retirement system was not designed to maximize your outcome, but it contains enough tools, if you know where to look, to significantly improve it. Now you know where to look. The retirement system was sold to you as security. What it actually transferred to you was risk, the fees, the market exposure, the tax complexity, the uncertainty of an outcome nobody could guarantee. All of it yours now. But here is what is also yours: the ability to navigate it better than most people do, because most people never look closely enough to see what we just covered. You did. Share this with one person who is contributing to a retirement account without knowing what it is actually costing them. And if you want to keep understanding the financial systems built around your behavior, subscribe to Hidden Truth Files. Hidden no more.